thanks to the organization, the organizers of the GOTOpia here, and letting me do the closing keynote today. Quite delighted to be able to do that. Thanks very much for that. And yeah, let's kick it off. So you should all be able to see the screen now. While we're waiting for this to load. No, just kidding, of course. I was wondering, like, who of you has read this book? And I'll put the title in here as well on the slide. Who's read that book? And before you raise your hand, let me stop you right there. That book doesn't exist, of course, right? Like the book, The Art of Delivering the Wrong Product 4 Times as Fast. That book doesn't exist. I haven't written it yet anyway. So could you get your CFO to buy that book for the entire company and distribute it for Christmas? Would he buy a book that says The Art of Delivering the Wrong Product 4 Times as Fast? Probably not. That'd probably be a pretty hard sell. Is that worth anything if you could deliver the wrong product or potentially wrong product 4 times as fast? It would actually, because it would give you 4 attempts for the same price. So the likelihood that you have a successful product, even if it's just pure luck, if you end up with a successful product, then the likelihood is 4 times as high if you can do it here with 4 times as fast. Another pro is, of course, that you can learn after each of those products, and maybe that has an impact on the next. Well, you probably recognize the book anyway, and the real title, of course, is this, right? The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. It's Jeff Sutherland's main Scrum book, where he describes like how he kind of came about with Scrum over many years, what articles he wrote and read, and how he came about with Scrum. Yeah. So what I'm criticizing is the title of that book, not the content. The content is quite good. I recommend you to read it. It's actually great. I will go as far as saying it's great. So go ahead and read it if you hadn't read it yet. But I do criticize the title. And the title I don't really like because it talks only to efficiency. It talks not to effectiveness. And that's what we're going to talk about in this in the next 45 minutes, mainly about the difference between efficiency and effectiveness and what the consequence is if you focus on efficiency. Okay, so to me, that's a warning sign if people just talk about efficiency. However, could you get your CFO to buy this book and distribute it in the company? You probably could. He would probably be happy to hand that out over Christmas. Because if everybody comes back after New Year's and works twice as hard and does twice as much work in half the time, he'd be happy. So we'll come back to that later. So from a marketing point of view, that is a really great title. And maybe it is the right title after all, because it does sell the book. And if people read the book, they leave smarter and understand a little bit more about agility. So before I continue, a few words about myself. My name is Klaus Bucka-Lassen. I'm originally Danish. I live and operate out of Zurich in Switzerland. Companies that I'm associated and work closely with, Scrumming, Flowdays, and the Swiss Agile leaders in my own company, Aragost, of course. These are it's a short list of companies that I have worked for or currently work for. You see there's Lego and Jägermeister. I can highly recommend to work for Jägermeister. Especially the evenings are quite fun there, I have to say. Yeah, and then that's what I do. Besides being speaker at various Agile conferences, I'm an Agile trainer, coach, and consultant. I've done that for the past 11 years. And it is also important to stress here that I do work closely with Jeff. I've done more than 20 co-trainings with him. I work closely with Scrum Inc. as well, have a good working relationship with him. I consider Jeff even a friend. So again, it's just the title. And I've had discussions with Jeff about the title of that book. It actually is mentioned in the Scrum and Scale guide as well, and I got it changed there to delivering twice the value in half the time. which is, I think, a better title. But this talk is about agility is inefficient, and I do admit there is a little bit of a clickbait, as I wrote in the description as well for this talk, because it does seem to work. People will join. For those of you who've joined to hear some Scrum bashing and Agile bashing here, sorry to disappoint. That's not what I will be doing. Like I said, I've been an Agile coach for 11 years, and I'll probably continue to be doing that for quite a while, and I love Scrum. So what's the goal of this talk then? Is to provoke a conscious discussion on pros and cons of agility, because there's no such thing as a free lunch. And the price, if you want to become agile, is that you, to some extent anyway, are willing to give up on efficiency. And we'll talk about that. And then I also want to give you a few tools, or warning signs, I call them. I'll come towards the end of the talk. Give you 4 warning signs to enable you or support or help you in detecting what I like to call fake agility. So agility for the wrong reasons. Okay. So to be able to do that, we need to talk about these 2 words, effectiveness and efficiency. And we need to define them. So that's what I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes on. Effectiveness is doing the right things. Many of you will have probably heard that before. Efficiency is about doing things right. And in Scrum, we actually have a role for each of that, right? We have the Scrum Master, who is about efficiency, and this product owner, who is about effectiveness and doing the right things. He's ordering the product backlog, thereby having the right order in, the right order, but a good order in which to do things. When we look at it from the customer point of view, efficiency does not have a lot to do with the customer. It's about looking inwards, defining and optimizing existing processes, automate things. That's what we mean about efficiency. And with effectiveness, we're looking outwards. We're observing the market, pivoting, innovating, etc. So you could also say, like, efficiency is the how we do things, the process, and effectiveness is the what we do. Okay, so if we have efficiency and effectiveness, then we could combine those 2 and talk about success. If you have, let's say we have a tire factory that's producing 10,000 tires a day. If they manage to go from 10,000 to 11,000 tires a day without increasing input, then they've improved efficiency by 10%. If nobody's buying those tires, those 11,000 tires, unless we sell them at a heavy discount, then they have a low effectiveness because people are not interested in that product. It's not superior, or it has a flaw or whatever, or it doesn't solve a problem for them. The other way around, if you have a tire factory that produces 3 tires a day, people are standing in line in front of the factory, and whenever a tire leaves the factory, they're basically having a fight over who gets that tire. They're willing to pay high premium prices for those tires. It's kind of like an Apple store when a new iPhone comes out. Okay, when we have that situation, they have high effectiveness, but with 3 tires a day is probably low efficiency. Depends on the competitors, of course, but 3 tires a day is probably not a tire factory that will survive for a long time. So both are important. That's what I'm trying to say. Efficiency and effectiveness are both important. So what we would like to do is doing the right things right. I'll call that success. And that means efficiency times effectiveness. And it's not plus, because if it was plus, then we could just focus on one and ignore the other. We need to address both of those. We want an efficient operation, and I think more importantly, an effective operation in the sense that we want to build products that people want to buy. Peter Drucker agrees with me. He says in one of his quotes, it's more important to do the right things than doing things right. Let's look at this, what strategy to choose. Say you're in this corner down here, your organization is low effectiveness and low efficiency, so you'll probably die unless you're in a monopoly and you're not competing with anybody. We know lots of companies that are down here that are in a monopoly, right? But if you're not in that luxury situation, then you need to move out of here. And of course, you want to end up here. The question is like, what strategy are you choosing? Are you focusing on effectiveness first or efficiency first? Right? And I know the smart guys in here, they will go like, oh, we'll go directly. We'll do an arrow here and go directly to the green area. Yeah, that would be nice. And we know that is quite successful, right? Doing everything at the same time. That was sarcasm. Danish sarcasm, by the way, for those that didn't get it. We want to focus on one thing first and then do that and then focus on the other thing. We don't want to do two things at the same time. So where do we want to go first? Well, Peter Drucker has also a saying on this: there's nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency something that shouldn't have been done at all. So that would be if we have something that is low effectiveness, nobody wants this product or very few people want this product, and we are working on like producing that product cheaper, then we would die slowly. So that doesn't sound like a good strategy. Dying slowly might actually be more painful than dying quickly. So let's go over here, and I will call that survive. So we have a product and we're building like that maybe nobody wants, and we are going towards a product that people want. And we're selling that at a premium because we're still not very efficient at building that product, so it'll probably be expensive. I see Tesla's strategy to be pretty much this. Like a Tesla Model S and Model X are $100,000 plus, or in that ballpark anyway, and that's what they started to sell. Other companies would go like, nobody will buy your car if you are charging $100,000 for it. But they found a product that a certain market share, a certain people are willing to pay a heavy premium for. So they went this way, and then once you're here, you can work on your efficiency. That's also what Tesla is doing these days. And we're going to get back to Tesla later. See an example on Tesla later. And yeah, if you choose this path, there is a chance that you'll land up here in the upper right green corner where it says flourish. Stephen R. Covey has another way of saying this. The strategy, what comes first? You might have heard this one as well before. If the ladder is not leaning against the right wall, every step we take just gets us the wrong place faster. I think that's a quite neat picture as well to have in your head if you think about efficiency and effectiveness. So what good is it if the ladder leans up against the wrong wall? And that's of course out of his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It doesn't say efficient people. So effectiveness first. And one last picture that I want to talk to is this one here, where we have Mr. Effectiveness and Efficiency sitting comfortably here at the top of the boat. And Mr. Efficiency, he says faster. And what does Mr. Effectiveness shout? He says plug the hole. Now, is it always effectiveness first? No. And this picture can explain that. If it takes them 15 minutes to find the hole and find something to plug with, they've probably sunk. So there is probably a situation, or there will be situation where this actually, for the short term anyway, is a strategy you need to choose. So it's not a recipe you can take home and say like, oh, it's always effectiveness first, and then we're going to look at efficiency second. You still have to apply common sense, which is not so common according to Voltaire, but you have to apply common sense still and figure out in your context what is first. Generally, if you don't have a product that people are willing to pay for, there's no real good reason to make it more efficient in producing that product. Okay, so let's look at 4 examples. This one. Like, if we had feedback from the audience, I would wait for somebody to tell me what that is. Everybody in the US will probably recognize this quickly by that logo here that's been taken down already. It's of course a Blockbuster store. It's one that's closed, obviously. It doesn't say Blockbuster anymore. They took everything down. There's no cars parked, no customers. So that one is closed. I wonder, is it the only one? Oh no, look at that. I found another picture. But this must be the only one because it reads this location only, right? So that's probably the only other Blockbuster store that's closed. Oh no, look at that. There's another 7. And as a matter of fact, there's 9,085 further branches that closed after Blockbuster went bust in 2010. So why do I talk to Blockbuster? Why is that interesting? Well, Blockbuster, it is quite ironic because Forbes, they did a study on that case and had an article out in 2014, so 4 years after they went bankrupt. And their conclusion was the irony is that Blockbuster failed because its leadership had built a well-oiled operational machine. So because they were so extremely efficient, that also led to them not letting new information in and ignoring effectiveness. They did not understand that the market was not willing to rent DVDs anymore or rent videos in a video store, that the market was moving somewhere else. And it is quite interesting that in 2000, so 10 years before they went bust, Reed Hastings, the founder of Netflix, was in money trouble, and he went to Dallas to the headquarters of Blockbuster and spoke to then CEO John Antioco and suggested a cooperation, a partnership. He offered Blockbuster to buy Netflix for $50 million. They laughed him out of the office and said no. And 8 years later, Jim Keyes, the then CEO of Blockbuster, still had quotes like this: neither Redbox nor Netflix are even on the radar screen in terms of competition. You can hear how proud he says that. This is 2 years before they went bankrupt and had 85,000 employees without a job all of a sudden. He also said DVDs are a melting glacier. Yes, it's melting, but it's a slow melt. Now, I wonder how many of you have rented videos in the past 10 years. I certainly haven't. I haven't even taken any of my DVDs from the basement for the past 8 years and watched those. So I would not call that a slow melt. I would call that a rapid melt. Kevin Lewis, the head of digital strategy, he said, "We are strategically better positioned than almost anybody out there. Never in my wildest dream would I have aimed this high." That was in 2010, the year they went bankrupt. That's quite interesting, I feel. And he talks strategically better position. And we'll see a little bit more about how proud people are of their strategies. Now, yesterday I checked the share price of Netflix, and this amounts to a market capitalization of $245 billion. At the highest point in 2004, Blockbuster was worth $5 billion. And don't get me started on tech companies and what they are valued. That's maybe crazy, but still, this is a factor of 50. So today, Netflix is 50 times worth more than Blockbuster was at their height. The $50 million, if they had bought Blockbuster, Netflix back then, would have been multiplied by a factor of 5,000 today. That said, I do not think Netflix would have been Netflix today if Blockbuster actually had bought them. I think Blockbuster probably would have killed the video star. I'm quite positive of that. So maybe, or probably quite good for Reed Hastings that Blockbuster didn't go into that partnership with Netflix. Example B, the second example. Except maybe the millennials in this call, everybody else will recognize this phone. That's a Nokia 3310. I think that's the one we also called the brick. Why do I show that? Well, in 2007, what happened in 2007? The iPhone came out. It was also that year where Forbes had this magazine cover, where it read down here, can anyone catch the cell phone king on the front page in 2007? And we all know what happened to Nokia after that. And the reason I'm mentioning Nokia here is it's quite similar to Blockbuster. There was an article by INSEAD on who killed Nokia. Nokia did. I find quite interesting. I found these comments from former employees of Nokia, where this one employee writes, like, Nokia was like a very large ship that took forever to change direction. And a little bit later, Nokia was a really efficient machine, but efficient at producing the wrong type of product, just like Blockbuster, right? The internal structure and way of operating made it very hard to respond to the iPhone. And I have friends that have worked for Nokia, and they've confirmed this. There was lots of ideas of what Nokia could have done, even shortly before the iPhone, but also after the iPhone came out. But that information never made it to the top where the decisions are made. And of course, Microsoft was also challenged by that. I don't know, some of you, or maybe many of you, have already seen this clip. We'll play it anyway because it's amusing.
Steve, let me ask you about the iPhone and the Zune, if I may. The Zune was getting some traction, and Steve Jobs goes to Macworld and he pulls out this iPhone. What was your first reaction when you saw that?
$500 fully subsidized with a plan? I said, that is the most expensive phone in the world, and it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard, which makes it not a very good email machine. Now, it may sell very well or not. We have our strategy. We've got great Windows mobile devices in the market today. You can get a Motorola Q phone now for $99. It's a very capable machine. It'll do music. It'll do internet. It'll do email. It'll do instant messaging. So I kind of look at that and I say, well, I like our strategy. I like it a lot.
There we had it again, this strategy. He likes the strategy. He likes it a lot. And his argument is that he knows what the market wants. He's not asking the market and probing it and testing it, but he knows what the market wants. He knows that business customers want a keyboard. I wonder how many of you have a mobile phone with a keyboard today? Probably nobody. And he also argues for efficiency. Again, says, like, we can produce a phone for $99 that can do everything that everybody wants. And the iPhone costs $500 and can do a whole lot less. And the first iPhone was ridiculous in what it couldn't do. Like, it was only 2G, it didn't have 3G. You couldn't copy and paste. You couldn't do MMSs. There's like lots of things you couldn't do. But what you could do with the first iPhone worked really well for people, apparently. And yeah, another example of a premium price that people were willing to pay for the right product. History seems to have it about repeating itself. So exactly 10 years later, I see this video. This is about the car industry. So it's a German video, but there's English subtitles. And this is the CEO. So Steve Ballmer was the CEO of Microsoft back then, of the video we just saw. This is the CEO of Volkswagen, or VW. And he talks about Tesla. And this is October 2017 in Germany.
Jetzt muss ich dann doch mal einen Satz zu Tesla sagen, bei allem Respekt, es gibt auf dieser Welt Ankündigungsweltmeister, ich nenne keine Namen, es gibt Unternehmen, die verkaufen mit Mühe 80.000 Autos pro Jahr, Volkswagen 11 Millionen in dem Jahr, dann gibt es Unternehmen wie Volkswagen, die erwirtschaften pro Jahr einen Gewinn von 13, 14 Milliarden Euro, und wenn ich richtig informiert bin, vernichtet Tesla pro Quartal einen dreistelligen Millionenbetrag. Schmeißt die Mitarbeiter raus, wie sie lustig sind, also Sozialkompetenz, weiß ich nicht, wo das ist. Also da bitte ich jetzt wirklich mal die Kirche im Dorf zu lassen und nicht Äpfel mit Birnen zu vergleichen. Ja, Baba.
So I heard, I like our strategy. I like it a lot. Similar to Steve Ballmer. It reminds me quite a bit of that Steve Ballmer video. I don't think we have to wait 10 years to see the consequences of Volkswagen's strategy. You can actually look at the graph. So this talk you just saw was from October 19th, 2017. This is 2 years later. Nothing has changed. What has changed since then? Well, for Volkswagen, not a lot. I mean, plus 75%, mainly in the past 2 months, is respectable. That's a good share price increase over the amount of over 3.5 years. However, Tesla, and you guys either know it already or kind of guessed it from the free space we have up here in the slide, looks differently. That's plus 1,000%. Okay, and I think Matthias Müller probably regrets that he mocked Tesla and says, let's not compare apples with pears. Today, Tesla is worth 4 times the amount that Volkswagen is worth. Or in other terms, it's like more than the 5 next biggest car companies, Toyota, Daimler, Volkswagen, General Motors, and Build Your Dreams, a Chinese company, together. Again, share prices are crazy, but it does send a signal, and it does say, like, if Tesla needs any money, they can easily raise capital currently to build whatever they feel like. One more example is one from my own experience. It's a telco here in Switzerland. I can reveal that much because we have 3, so now you have to guess which one it is if you like. Yeah, the profits were eroding, and they said help. And a big management consulting fee company came about, did 330 pages of PowerPoint. I was allowed to see the last page only. Hooray to transparency. And it read, yeah, you're right. You're in trouble. You need to save money. And the telco says, like, how? And the management consulting firm says, become agile. I can tell you those conversations that we had with them as agile coaches was quite challenging. Because if a company wants to become agile in order to save money, then you're headed for trouble. That will always create problems. Now, if the CEOs of huge companies like Microsoft and Volkswagen are rolling the drums for efficiency and saying like efficiency, 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 and not anybody, like we haven't heard anybody talk to effectiveness, right? If economic schools and MBA programs talk to efficiency, if management consulting firms say like, yes, you need to become more efficient, because this is all about efficiency, then no wonder we see signals for pushes for efficiency gains so many places. Just open the newspaper and read on the latest programs of your government, and it's probably about efficiency. I'll make it a little bit more clear which warning signs I think there are. 4 of them, in my view. One is budgets and cost cutting. So when it's about spending cuts or budget reductions, the IT department gets a little less money for the next year. It's about cost cutting, and that means we again we are focusing on cost rather than on value, and that's quite dangerous. And it's again focusing on efficiency rather than let's build the right product. So imagine you're building the wrong product, like Nokia did, like Volkswagen maybe still does, like Blockbuster did. If they're only cutting costs, if they're trying to dig them out of that hole by cost cutting, you can see where that leads, right? They're not going to have a new product that people will buy. They're just trying to sell it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. This relates also to the innovator's dilemma for those people who want to look that one up. Second one is company is run by process people. Previously I had the economists, like company is run by economists. I've made it a little bit more broad and say like generally process people. So there's good reason we have process people and we have economists working for larger corporations, but they should be supporting and not running the company, if you ask me. Like this is, for instance, a job ad for a bank here, a private bank in Zurich, where they're looking for a head of process excellence for the process excellence program. And he's supposed to process, like design and optimize the processes, define measures on how we can measure those processes. It reads here, control the transformation success centrally. Of course, it's centralized. We have process excellence, enforced adherence. It reads here, best practices, all those terms. If those people are running your organization, you'll probably be having an organization that is purely focused on efficiency and very little on effectiveness, or at best, secondly, effectiveness. Number 3, I feel, is a warning sign if there is even a strive towards high degree of specialization and continuously more and more specialization instead of T-shapedness. Think about it for your organization. Like if you are suggesting that a non-expert will do a certain work at some point, like not the expert, but somebody else, how does the organization, how do the people in that organization react? Will they go like, no, but Peter is the expert. Peter needs to do this, right? Is it a problem? Like imagine you're in a Scrum planning. Have you witnessed that towards the end of the planning, Jasper raises his hand and says, well, there's nothing for me in this sprint, right? And then they start digging as a team in the product backlog, and they go far down, and in position number 72, they find something for Jasper. And then they pull that in. So Jasper can work in his specialized area and do that work. And there will be lots of handovers between those specialists. Now, if we're in a complex context and it's not the same amount of specialization we need all the time, then that is a pretty bad strategy. If you see that in your organization, it's probably a sign for the organization to be focusing on efficiency rather than effectiveness. And rather than building those things that are necessary now and that provide most value to the organization, we are building the things that we have specialists for. And what I often hear in that context when we do such suggestions and say like, we need people who have an ability to work outside their specialization, the company's reaction is often, we can't afford that. As if we would suggest to do that and work on our T-shapedness just because we think it's fun, right? And the last one, and by far the worst one, is utilization maximization. And that's actually quite ironic because that's not even efficient. Like making people work 100%, just like anything in a complex system, is not efficient, and it's certainly not helping your effectiveness. It's just making sure that everybody is stressed and that everybody is working at 100%. And 100% means that people will not be able to help other people. There's not space, not slack to do the important things. It reminds me of a story where I remember vividly, I was sitting at I was still developer and team lead at that time, and I had a project manager come over to me and said, Klaus, do you all have enough to do? And I nodded, and it was kind of a reflex. I thought about it a lot afterwards, and I was like, why did I nod? Well, because I know exactly what happens if I shook my head. Then the answer would have been, well, then you can also do this, right? Ensuring, as if it's the project manager's job to make sure that everybody is working 100%. Okay, and I went home and I thought like, does everybody have enough to do? And I came to the conclusion that that particular question has made it into the top 3 of the dumbest questions I've ever been asked. Because it's a ridiculous, stupid question. Like, do you have enough to do? Now, the question should have been, are you delivering enough? Is anything in your way? Can I help you? Right? So that's utilization maximization. There is a video from Henrik Nieberg. It's called The Resource Utilization Trap. I will not show it here, but that's quite helpful. So have a have a look at that if you like it. He explains it quite well. So back to the book, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. What should it read instead? What should it have been called instead? And I did say it at the beginning already, right? It should have been called The Art of Delivering Twice the Value at Half the Cost. That's what the book should have been called. Maybe you will write that book. So in summary, agility is also about efficiency, as we have the Scrum Master role, for instance, in Scrum, but effectiveness is more important. You first need to figure out what product you're building, and if it's a product you have already built for a long time, like the 3310 or the Blockbuster rental of DVDs and videos, you need to constantly be on your toes and be sure that you're continuously building the right product, and then see like if we can build it efficiently. The more complex your context is, the more important effectiveness becomes, and the more humble you have to be about like how sure you are about the market, which we saw opposite examples of with Matthias Müller and Steve Ballmer. Be aware when people in your vicinity are primarily talking to efficiency, or even worse, like to maximization of utilization. In the latter, you might even want to run and find a different employer. Take small steps with regular course corrections, which leads to a better result. So that's effectiveness, and Scrum is awesome. Needed to say that at the end as well. So with that, I'd like to open for questions. Thanks very much, everybody.